How many of you guys with women have learned that no means yes?
Is Limbaugh an evil sexist? After all, everyone knows.
No always means no.
It always means no.
But maybe it doesn't.
Does that mean no, absolutely no, or does it mean try again in a minute?
Yeah, try again in a minute. Maybe different
You agree with
pretenses.
that?
I agree. Try again in a minute.
So what is consent for sex? Could an app help?
When you are ready to ask a partner if they consent to sexual activity, just launch the app.
Or maybe everyone should have to sign a consent form like this one.
Is the new pickup line going to be, oh, baby, will you check that box?
My producer found many students thought this form reasonable.
Just to make sure that, there's no ambiguity.
Sure, I would consider it.
Sex in America is changing. Some websites encourage cheating.
Life is short. Have an affair.
And we're told today kids have much more sex.
The statistics are horrifying. They're really so frightening.
But is that true?
I've had men partners.
Sex. That's our show tonight.
And now, John Stossel.
California recently passed a law that says before a college student may initiate sex, he or she must get affirmative consent. So what does that mean? It's another stupid government intrusion into private life, says Kat Timpf of the National Review. But Barnard College student Julie Zeilinger, author of a book subtitled Why Feminism is Not a Dirty Word, says there is a culture of rape on campuses and therefore the law is a good idea. There's a culture of rape?
Yeah, I think rape culture is incredibly pervasive in this day and age. We're raised in this society in which sexualized violence is the norm, in which we're taught that women or anyone who is being perpetrated against can prevent sexual assault. And that's just not the case.
How is it the norm?
This is how we're raised. This is how we're socialized based on gender. We're taught that men should be able to pursue any kind of sexual action that they see fit, and that women must always be policing them and policing themselves in terms of their sexuality. And I think that this yes means yes consent bill and the idea of consent in general tries to reestablish an equilibrium.
All right, Kat, no one's for sexual assault.
Right, but this law is insane. All this does is make it so you can convict people without having to prove what happened.
Well, I think the interesting thing about this law is that we have to look at it as a first step. I agree that I don't think it's completely...
First step? So you want more steps?
Well, I think that we have to look at it as a preventative measure. And I think that government and institutions intervening in this way is very reactionary. I would like to see...
Because of this epidemic of rape.
Yeah, I think that we need to start...
But what epidemic of rape? Here's the chart of rape in America. It's been going steadily down.
I think the statistic that I have seen is that 1 in 5 college women will...
Oh, that's statistic.
That's famous. So think about that. 1 in 5 women.
There is actually, I know that there is dispute about that study, but I think what also is very important to consider is that there are a lot of rapes that go completely unreported because of this rape culture.
But this 1 in 5 statistic is just nuts.
I mean, does it have to be as many as 1 in 5 to still be a serious issue?
The government has no right to say, this is how you have to have sex. And if you don't say yes, according to this law, if you have a boyfriend forever and he goes from kissing to more with you, which is, understandably just so traumatic, then you can accuse him of sexual assault. How is
what
that
about
okay?
that? You have a fight later.
Okay?
He's broken the law.
I think that when two people are approaching a situation, there should always be the affirmation of consent, that you shouldn't take these for granted. I think that framing this culture in a way where yes is always implied is really detrimental to women.
You don't create binding laws to kind of influence a culture. You create laws so that people have to follow them, and if they don't, they're punished. That's what laws are for.
This law is just a way to reframe the way we talk about sexual assault in this country and really about advocating for more consent.
What if the woman just wants to be quiet during sex?
Well, I think that's how we have to restart to rethink sex and what does consent mean.
But he would be breaking the law if he didn't get that go-ahead at each base.
But I don't think being affirmative or conscious has to be necessarily screaming.
We're creating all these problems to try to do something that the law can't even accomplish anyway. Because let's be honest, there aren't just these nice guys running around because they don't know they're raping people. They don't realize it. Whether it's you have to say no or you can't say no, you have to say yes or yes, no. Rapists don't care because they're rapists.
Well, I think that that's why we have to look at these measures as a first step, and that consent education and changing
What are the further steps?
I think implementing sexual education and consent education.
We have plenty of sexual education, especially on college campuses.
No, we really don't, actually.
Julie, let me just ask you about, you talked about what consent is. The California law says silence does not mean consent. Affirmative consent must be ongoing throughout the sexual activity. I mean, to me, that sounds like a romance killer.
Well, I think it's actually incredibly romantic to know that you're not raping someone or violating them.
I think you know that.
You know that.
I think you know that.
Kat, you wrote an article for National Review that says this is insulting to women. It implies women are too weak to say no to sex.
This is assuming that a woman is never able to say no because she's just so helpless. That is so offensive.
Women are totally socialized to be passive in this way and to always be policing themselves.
So that they will actually allow themselves to be assaulted rather than just saying no?
I just think that there are a lot of other factors in the way that young women are raised.
You think women don't feel comfortable saying no to the point where they will allow themselves to be assaulted, and that's the government's responsibility to jump in and save them from that?
Well, I think we're not seeing a lot of areas of recourse in other areas, and then these institutions and these government policies are just a way, as I said,
so government's in there now. Comedian Dave Chappelle saw this controversy coming a decade ago. He ran this skit on his TV show.
These days, you can never be too sure they aren't going to dispute whether the sex was consensual.
Wait a minute, before we go any further.
Which is why this night calls for the love contract.
What's this?
Nothing, it's just a document saying that you're a willing participant in this sexual experience.
Well, I am.
Just sign here and here.
Seems like the next step on campus. So the Stossel show drew up an affirmative consent form. A college might use this to make sure that consent's really given. This would be signed by the initiating sexual partner and the non-initiating sexual partner. It governs hand-holding, hugs, kisses, petting, and so on. I took this to Columbia University to see what students would think of it. No, I didn't. I'd be accused of being a sexist guy, mocking sexual assault. So I sent producer Ricky Ratliff.
Maybe this will help clear up any misunderstandings in the dorm room. You sign this form. She agrees that, you guys are engaged in these activities.
No, I don't. I'm not comfortable with this.
Definitely kill the mood. Like, I wouldn't even want to, be in a relationship with that person or anybody.
Suggestive comments. Complete nudity, fuzzy handcuffs, biblical relations. This way, everyone is all on the same page.
I think coming from Germany, there are some American laws that sound very strange for us.
What struck me about this experiment is that Ratliff's form was an absurd joke.
Is the new pickup line going to be, "Oh, baby, will you check that box?"
But few students laughed. Both men and women seem to believe there's a sexual assault crisis, and colleges should have more rules.
I think Columbia's policies are too relaxed.
Do you think that colleges involve themselves too much in what goes on in your sex life?
No, I think that they don't involve themselves enough.
Something needs to be done. I'm not sure that this is the right way, but I think that women need more protection.
It could come to this. I would hope that it wouldn't have to come to this, but I mean, at this rate, who knows?
Julie, these are your people. This is your school. And at your school, there's somebody people call Mattress Girl. Tell about her.
Emma Silkowitz. It's a performance art piece, but also a response to the fact that she was sexually assaulted and did not feel that Columbia addressed the situation correctly. She found that the institution where she went to school and was supposed to be looking out for her and have her best interest at heart ultimately did not. So she's trying to raise awareness in a different way.
We saw her on campus when we shot there, and she complained that interest was waning in her mattress project, and that day nobody was helping her carry her mattress.
There is overwhelming support for what she's trying to do, and she's given a lot of survivors the confidence to share their own stories and to pursue further action.
Our sexual contract form was a joke, but now there is a real-life app that a company's pushing as a new way for couples to establish consent.
Welcome to Good to Go, a simple sexual consent mobile phone app for iOS and Android phones. When you are ready to ask a partner if they consent to sexual activity, just launch the app and provide the phone to your partner. Your partner is presented with the question, "Are you good to go?" and 3 choices. If the partner chooses "I'm good to go," then they also assess their sobriety level. If the partner chooses "pretty wasted," the selection changes to "no thanks." A partner cannot consent if they are pretty wasted.
You cannot consent if you're drunk. When I was in school, without alcohol, there wouldn't have been much sex. And now I'm told alcohol is forbidden?
I think there's a level of intoxication, yes, that we have to be aware of. But I think that the idea of externalizing this is to teach people that they cannot perpetrate sexual violence against someone who is
We're against sexual violence, but saying alcohol
They
is rape.
absolutely do. People aren't just confused about when they're raping somebody or not. That's just not the case.
But can you give consent if you've been drinking? Are you going to tell me my understanding is Columbia policy is if she's been drinking, that's an assault. She cannot give consent.
I think the idea behind this is consent is situationally specific. I don't think we can put any blanket rule on drinking.
Why there's
Columbia rule ridiculous?
Blanket policy.
But I think it's about consent is situationally specific and mutually agreed upon.
But the rules aren't stupid?
That women shouldn't be drinking. I think it's part of this victim blaming culture to assume that just because a woman has been drinking that she's available. I think you have to have...
Well, Columbia is assuming she's helpless. I mean, I kind of like Heather McDonald's Weekly Standard cover story that says it's the new Victorian era. Portrays women as fainting, helpless victims of the male sex drive.
It's so insulting to think that women need the government to potentially ruin young men's lives because women are definitely just so helpless that they can't say no. They don't want to have sex with somebody.
I don't think it's about being helpless. Again, I think it's about the way in which women are raised and taught to police themselves in this country.
So they're taught to be helpless, because not being able to say no when you don't want to do something sounds like the definition of helpless to me. No, I just did it.
Me too. Thank you, Kat and Julie. We won't solve this here today. To join this argument, please follow me on Twitter at FBN Stossel. Use that hashtag SexEd. Or like my Facebook page and post on my wall. We want to know what you think. Next, our game show. Real or fake? I'll test the independents. Can they tell which sex laws are real? For example, in Mississippi, you could be sentenced for up to 5 years in jail for seducing a woman by promising marriage. Is that real or fake? It's time to play real or fake. Government routinely creates stupid laws. What the busybodies legislate about sex is no different. So let's see if Fox Business hosts Camille Foster, Kennedy, and Matt Welch can figure out which sex laws are real and which my staff and I made up. So we invite you to play along at home. Here we go. You can be sentenced for up to 5 years in jail in Mississippi for seducing a woman by... Well, let me finish. By promising marriage.
You have me at Mississippi.
It is real.
Yeah.
However, she has to be of previous chaste character.
Of course.
Oh, yes.
Is there testing?
I'm sure there is some standard for chaste character.
If she's been previously chaste, it means she's fast.
That's true.
All right, Kennedy, you're behind already. In Montana, it's illegal to have sex while your pet is in the room. Yeah, that's pretty weird. And that was fake, in fact.
It's fake, but I do try to avoid that. Just in general.
Good to know. And the pet appreciates it. In Massachusetts, sex between unmarried individuals is illegal. One real, two fakes. Camille gets it right.
Boom.
Not just Massachusetts, but Georgia, Idaho, Mississippi, North and South Carolina, Utah, and Virginia.
Wow. Be careful.
Unreal.
They should sunset laws once a century or...
Yeah.
Of course, they don't lock people up for fornicating, and most people now have sex before marriage.
They do if you do it right.
You could say, what's the harm of these laws? They're not enforced.
Yeah. Well, if you have the right partner and a good pair of handcuffs, they are enforced.
It's also selective prosecution. Anytime that there is a disfavored minority of whatever stripe, then prosecutorial discretion could be, we don't like you, so we're going to use this bizarre law against you. That's happened a lot in American history.
A good reason to sunset these laws before a bad cop can run you over. In North Dakota, it is against the law if a woman dresses in a way that promotes reckless sex.
Reckless sex.
You guys are right. Camille got this one wrong.
All right.
I was hoping
we made that one up.
I was hoping.
I like reckless sex. Yeah. I mean, I like the term that your staff chose. That was
Yeah. In Utah, it's against the law for parents to allow, to allow your children to overhear you having sex.
Oh.
We made that one up. Camille
Yeah.
figured that one out. In Virginia, it's illegal to drive anyone, taxi drivers watch out, to any place if you think that person may be going there for illicit sex. Really? You think that's real? And it is.
It's Virginia. Virginia's for lovers, but they've had a lot of notorious sex laws over the years, some of which...
It's not for part-time lovers, though.
That's true.
In Texas, you may not own more than 6 sex toys. Camille gets that one. No, really?
I don't have direct experience with it, but I'm
possesses
familiar.
6 or more obscene devices.
Hook 'em horns.
Presumed to possess them with intent to distribute the same.
That's right.
Wow.
Which could be dangerous. You don't want an unlicensed person out there distributing sex toys.
Good point. Electrocution and whatnot.
Camille, you won. Congratulations. I
Thank
wish
you.
we had a prize. Matt was second. You were
Victory is its
last.
own prize.
Thank you for playing. Coming up, pornography, kids having sex, and the weird new world of online dating.
I'm looking for someone other than my wife. Other than my wife. Actually, Madison's right.
Kids nowadays think of sex as just something to do.
Kids have sex earlier than we ever did.
It's a lot more open now than it was back then.
That's sure what I've heard. More kids have sex today at younger ages. Here's one of my colleagues commenting on a report a few years ago about the new teenage oral sex craze.
I mean, is oral sex now going to become the new kissing? I mean, I'm telling you, it makes me absolutely crazy to think about what kids are doing.
Me too. Except, are kids really doing it? Columbia University psychologist Dr. Sari Locker studies the data on this. So I have heard there's this oral sex craze.
It's not true. It's not true at all. And it's gotten so distorted. And the media really grabbed a hold of it years ago, 2006, 2007, and they still talk about it as if it's real. Oprah, Dr. Phil, they said that kids were having oral sex everywhere in the cafeteria and just all this. And it's not true.
And regular sex at younger and younger ages,
Yes.
It was the new norm.
Which is also not true. The average age of first sex is 17. So at age 17, about 48% or so have had sex. By high school graduation, about half. A little more than that, maybe 60%.
And this is much higher than it used to be.
No, this is much lower. The average age used to be 16. Everything has dropped. Teen pregnancy has dropped. Teen births have dropped. Abortion rate has dropped.
This is what's so amazing. Nobody believes this.
I'll tell you what happens. This is why. A research study will come out that will say, there's a new study. Let's say an anchor person on a morning talk show will say, there's a new study.
I'll give an example of that.
Okay.
The sloppiness of my colleagues in the so-called news business always amazes me. Here's the host of the Today Show, citing what he calls a study, although it was done by a model with a TV show.
Recently, the Tyra Banks Show conducted a study about girls and sex, and the revelations are a little bit shocking.
How many of you guys here are having unprotected sex? How many partners have you had?
I've had 9 partners.
That's quite a study, huh?
The Tyra Banks study.
Oh, my goodness.
But it's sad that this teenager, if she was a teenager, had 9 partners.
Absolutely, and the reality is that there are, for some people, that happens, but very, very rarely. I want to say what also happens on these morning talk shows is the anchor will announce there's a new study on teen sex that says half of teenagers are having sex. And the other anchor will then say, oh, that's horrible. 13-year-old children are having sex. The study was on 18-year-olds. They don't tell you that. Half of 18-year-olds having sex? That's normative. For 13-year-olds, the reality is
3%.
That's right.
12-year-olds, 1%.
Yeah. And that may be abusive, coercive sexual abuse.
Now, you say it's been going down, but it went up in the 60s. I was fortunate enough to live through the 60s sexual revolution.
There's been a statistic that about premarital sex, that about 95% of Americans have premarital sex. That doesn't mean teen sex. That means premarital. No, not just now. That's been since the 60s. In the 60s, it was something like 80%, or even before that, starting in the 50s. High percentages of people were having premarital sex. But people didn't get that. So they kept thinking, well...
Because nobody talked about it. People lied.
About it. So they kept thinking sex needs to be restrained, when it was actually, things weren't so off kilter. It's the way it had always been.
Another scare is sexting. NBC News. Sexting is the new normal. Washington Times. It's the new first base. Atlantic. It's the rule. It's not?
No. And what happened just a few weeks ago, it was terrible. The research study came out that said that sexting does not lead to risk behaviors like unprotected sex or alcohol or drug use. And the researcher put in the study that it might even be a sort of normal for adolescents to be doing this sexting behavior. And it's only about 20% who are doing it, of older teenagers. Now, I would never use the word normal anyway, but he was just trying to say it doesn't lead to risky sex. And somehow, the Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, like you said, NBC, CBS, Fox News, ran with these headlines, sexting is the new normal. It's not the new normal. It's not the new first base, not at all.
Good. Another sex topic that will soon be talked about more is rough sex. That's because the new movie based on 50 Shades of Grey, the fastest selling paperback of all time, is about to be released.
My tastes are very singular. You wouldn't understand.
Enlighten me then.
Already the media...
And I can't even stand seeing that trailer.
Already the media are doing stories like this one from Cosmo. Why wanting rough sex is more common than you think. It's not more common than you think?
No. People are buying sex toys, thinking they want to put S&M in their sex life because they heard about it on talk shows, because of the popularity of this badly written book. It is not enhancing most people's sex lives. It's detracting from what they say they really want from sex, which is connection. It might add fun for a few minutes, but then the sex toys they buy usually don't end up anywhere other than the garbage. People have a very difficult time realizing that sex is just a normative part of life and that we should try to enjoy it the way we want to enjoy it.
Thank you, Dr. Locker. Coming up, porn. Is it bad for people? Also, am I a sexist?
Do women have a worse sense of direction? Should women pay more for health insurance?
How do you meet your soulmate? At work? I met my wife at work. Some people get introduced by friends or meet a stranger at a bar, but today more people meet online. Here's a ranking from the National Academy of Sciences. 35% meet their spouse online, 21% through work, 19% through friends, 10% at school, 9% at a bar, 4% at a place of worship. What's new, of course, is that a third of the people met online, and about half of them through an internet dating site. The biggest of those is Match.com. It works like most of them do. You create a profile for yourself, post pictures, say what your interests are and what you're looking for in a partner. Some people post their height, religion, body type. Some post how much money they make. The site's computer then offers you some choices based on what it knows about you and them, and then you can cruise those people's pictures and profiles, see if you find someone you'd like to date. If they want to date you, you make your own arrangements. Does it work? Do people find partners? Well, some do, as the commercials point out.
My cousin met someone through Match.
2 years later, still together.
They're perfect for each other.
And they met on Match?
They met on Match, and I went to the wedding.
You want what they have.
I do.
Match.com is now the most popular site. Their chief scientist is anthropologist Helen Fisher. So I would think that this would just be a better way of meeting people because the computer has more information than anybody ever had before.
You know, for millions of years, we lived in little hunting and gathering groups. And even though you didn't know that cute boy on the other side of the waterhole, your mother did, your father did, people knew all about this person. And so by the time you met them, you knew a great deal about who they were. It's natural to do that.
And there are a bunch of sites. Yours was the first. $30 a month people pay. eHarmony, they pay more. Plenty of Fish is free. So is OkCupid. Now, if you think this works better, have you tried it? You're single.
You know, I have tried it a couple times, and I might go back on it again. And I've met some good boys, too. So It's and you know, it really extends your range. And what's really interesting is, I mean, I'm over 50, and I'm not going to meet somebody in a bar. I know all my girlfriends already. Nobody at work's going to introduce me to somebody. And you know, as you get older, it's a very effective way. You can do it in your pajamas at midnight on the internet.
On these sites, people can lie.
People can lie everywhere, you know. I mean, you know, basically, I mean, I might get shot for this, but the bottom line is dating is not about honesty. Dating is about winning. And a peacock doesn't make its tail feathers look smaller. And people will say, we know what people lie about. Men lie about their height and how much money they make, and women lie about their age and their weight. The bottom line is you've got to go out and meet the person. And then the ancient human brain clicks in, and we court the way we have for millions of years.
And the old days, before computers, parents, families arranged marriages. I was surprised to see in the research that those marriages are just as likely to last.
Yes, they are. Particularly in places like India and China, where people expect the parents to pick them the right person.
All right, one of the newer criticized sites is Tinder.
Yeah.
And this you swipe left or right just based on looks. And this person might be near you, might be in the park, might be down the street. Might you want to meet this person? You can make an instant decision. Sounds very shallow.
Right. Shallow, maybe. Natural, definitely.
Looks matter.
Looks matter. They mattered a million years ago. You know, for millions of years we lived in the trees. If you had bad eyesight, you fell out. They call it love at first sight, not love at first smell or love at first joke or whatever. Bottom line is, you know, immediately the brain, in seconds, the brain says, okay, too tall, too short, too fat, too thin, too old, too young, too pink, too green, out. It's the first breaking point, and then you go on to learn more about somebody.
All right, but let me think of one exception. In 2020, we did a study where we lined guys up, tall to short, and we told women who were behind the glass, who would you want to date? They all picked the tall guy. Then we lied and said the tall guy is ex-con, the short guy is a millionaire. You women are so shallow, you still wanted the tall guy.
Tall often means higher testosterone, and for millions of years, a higher testosterone person could have brought home more meat.
And a tall guy might protect you and from the bears or whatever. But what this leaves out is that they did not know the people, and there are plenty of women whose partners are shorter than they. Once you get to know somebody, doesn't this all change?
That's a really good point. Another question we asked is, have you ever started out finding somebody unattractive and eventually fallen in love with them? And 35% said yes. Think of reasons to say yes, because the more you get to know somebody, the more you like them, and the more you think that they're like you.
Finally, there's one dating site that seems truly creepy. It's called Ashley Madison, which sounds so sweet and traditional, but check out their commercial.
Ashley Madison.
Shh, Ashley Madison.
Life is short. Have an affair.
They promote affairs.
Right.
You have a problem with this?
I'm not in the should business. I'm an anthropologist. What fascinates me is, first of all, if you're not going to be adulterous, you're not going to be adulterous whether there's an Ashley Madison or no Ashley Madison. It's a little bit like alcoholism. Some people are predisposed. People will be adulterous if they're going to, and if there's no Ashley Madison, they'll find another way.
Ashley Madison has another commercial where men sing about having the affair.
I'm looking for someone other than my wife. Other than my wife. Ashley Madison's right. I'm looking for someone other than my wife. Other than my wife. Ashley Madison's right.
I have to admit, I find that a bit revolting.
I do too, other than
really,
a wife.
That really turned me off.
People get hurt by this.
Nobody gets out of love alive. And when it comes to adultery, we really can lose.
Thank you, Helen Fisher. Next, porn is more available than ever. I'm told that's a terrible thing. Is it, though? A porn star takes on the critics when we come back.
Hello, my name is Belle Knox. I am 18 years old. It was during my first semester there that I started doing porn.
Now, porn. 65% of Americans say it's morally wrong, and yet a survey of adults found 75% of men and about half the women admit to watching it.
Duke University student Belle Knox turned to porn to pay her $60,000 college tuition. It was one of her tapes that we played at the beginning of this segment. So, Belle, you found your supposedly open-minded fellow students were pretty hostile.
Yes, I faced a lot of criticism at school, and it was definitely difficult to be on campus.
Were you surprised?
I was, because I thought that Duke was more liberal.
Some of your fellow students said things like, she deserves to be raped, an embarrassment to Duke, we're going to throw garbage at her every day. People haven't thrown garbage at you, I assume?
Luckily, I haven't had any type of violence inflicted towards me. It's just been a lot of really hateful talk.
How do you feel about little kids watching you? Computers accessible to everybody sometimes.
Sorry, can I think about that question a little bit longer?
Sure. And I'll move on. A conservative from Fox says you're making a huge mistake.
A little advice for Miss Belle Knox. You won't need college if you do porn because you won't be getting a job.
You won't get a job because of what you did.
The issue with what she's saying is that, yes, it may be the status quo that I'll have a few employers who won't want to hire me, but she should be challenging that instead of accepting it and perpetuating it.
Some headlines about you. USA Today, is the Duke porn star a sex slave?
The mainstream media has tried so hard to paint me as a victim who is disempowered and who is exploited by the sex industry. Meanwhile, the irony is that they're making a lot of money off of using my name and using my story while I'm not making any type of money off of it.
It also disturbs me that they use this word slave. It's sort of an insult to the people who suffered real slavery. You are choosing to do this because you didn't want to hit your parents up for Duke's ridiculous tuition.
Absolutely, and I think it's an issue when we blend together the idea of trafficking and people who legitimately have had a really horrible experience in the sex industry or with any type of slavery, as you said, and with people like me who love their work and who did it of their own volition.
You love your work?
I do love my work.
Here's another headline that makes some more sense from MTV of all people. Does porn ruin sex lives by setting up unrealistic expectations?
In pornography, there's such a wide range of women and men with different body types, and there's never a one-size-fits-all image that we try to portray for what a healthy sex life should be. And I personally, I love watching porn with a partner. It always makes the night a little bit better.
I've heard this worry often, and people say, yeah, the real women in my life, they can't compete with my ideal, which I can find on the web. But I sure haven't seen people not having real sex just because there's much more porn everywhere.
Absolutely, and I think that the crux of the issue is that we don't have enough open and honest conversations about sex and sexuality.
Okay, I agree with that. Thank you, Belle Knox. America's attitudes sure have changed about porn. When I was a kid, Congress held hearings and warned about the incredible volume of filthy literature flooding the nation's newsstands. One congressman said the post office should be given power to impound mail that includes lewd matter. Some novels were banned. This copy of Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer included a warning not to be imported into Britain or the United States. Even in Times Square, New York, of all places, police sometimes raided magazine stores. When I was 17, police arrested 154 people in what they called a smut drive. 62 were jailed. We've come a long way from that. But I grew up accepting the idea that porn had to be hidden from children. Except now, in the internet age, it's not. 6-year-olds who have computers get spam pushing things like penis enlargers. Any teenager now has access to images that would have horrified adults years ago. It's so horrible, and yet, what's the effect? Mostly nothing, as we heard earlier in the show. Teen pregnancy's down, teen sex is down, rape is down. Porn has not created the harm that people said it would. Next, am I a sexist pig? These people think so.
Rape is not TV hype! Come on, everybody, louder!
On the Stossel Show, we focus on economics, business, consumer issues, libertarianism. So why do a show on sex? Because sex sells, of course. But that's not the real reason for this show. We libertarians appreciate the benefits of free choice. America's changing attitudes about sex should teach all of us the benefits of choice, of not having central planners decide what all the rules are. When I was a kid, the so-called experts were certain that people had to be protected from magazines like Playboy. Most authorities said Americans had to be protected from homosexuality, too, and gay marriage was out of the question. Adultery and fornication were illegal, still are in some states, yet most Americans now have sex before marriage. What if we lock up all the politicians who've had affairs? Be a good start. My point is that there is no one source of wisdom about anything, including sex. And when we allow authorities to make rules that limit our choices, that hurts everyone. We see the harm most clearly in other countries, where the autocrats are men and religious fanatics do horrible things to women. In America, the new bullies are authoritarians like Bill O'Reilly and indignant college feminists who claim there's a new rape epidemic. O'Reilly and the Get Tough on Crime crowd pushed laws that punish teenagers who have sex with their 15-year-old girlfriends. This young man just spent 3 years in jail for having oral sex with his teenage girlfriend. The college feminists give us crazy rules like Columbia University's "there must be enthusiastic consent" policy. Guys, I guess that means if she didn't shout, "Yes!" you could be in trouble. Better record her answer on your phone. I shouldn't joke about this. Young men now get kicked out of college for sleeping with a woman who later decides, maybe I shouldn't have. I covered one such case. A Brown University senior slept with a freshman boy, a senior with a freshman. Next morning, she gave him her phone number. Didn't that confirm consent? But later, after meeting with professors in the Women's Studies Department, she decided she'd been drunk and could not have given consent. The boy was accused of rape and driven from campus. Then look what happened when I tried to ask questions about that. What's allowed? Is every person supposed to be sober when they have sex? You can never have sex drunk?
That is rape. Unconsenting sex is rape.
Get off this campus. We don't want you here.
Appropriate behavior.
We can't hear you with these people trying to spit nonsense.
Rape is not TV hype. Come on, everybody, louder.
They kept yelling, so dissenters couldn't be heard. Eventually, they pulled out my microphone cord. The Brown feminists wanted no opposition. I call them the totalitarian left. Today, I get called a sexist pig just for saying differences between men and women ought to be acknowledged. For example, women used to pay more for health insurance because women spend more on health care. Obamacare supporters said that's sexist, and they banned all price discrimination. On Fox and Friends, I pushed back.
Women go to the doctor much more often than men. Maybe they're smarter, or maybe they're hypochondriacs. They live longer. Who knows?
Right.
But if it's insurance, you ought to be able to charge people who use the services more.
If you call it insurance, the price should reflect the cost. It's just math. But I'm told I have some issue when it comes to women, as shown by my rant about how women are hypochondriacs and there should be no gender equality in health care. What? That's not what I said. But I've lost this battle, and today even men say women should pay no more. Should women pay more for health insurance because they go to the doctor more often?
No, not at all.
Should women pay more for health insurance?
No.
Even if they run up higher costs, go to the doctor more often?
No.
Should men pay more for car insurance? Yeah, people always get thrown by that one. We men do pay more for car insurance, and we should because we drive more and wreck more cars. We also pay more for life insurance because we die younger. Are we men victimized? No, it's just actuarial math. We men are different from you women, and people should acknowledge that. But most people I ask wouldn't hear of it. Do women have a worse sense of direction than men?
Definitely not. Much better.
In fact, most men do have a better sense of direction.
We know about these differences thanks to studies like the one done at the University of Rochester, repeated here for our camera. Students are blindfolded and then walk through the maze of tunnels that run underneath the campus. When the women are asked where a college building is,
Can you tell me where Wilson Commons is?
they're not so sure.
shall we?
Men, however, retained a sense of what direction they'd moved.
Go through the next doors, take a left, then a right, then a left.
Women, on the other hand, have a better memory for detail. Check out this test.
Have a chair here.
At York University in Toronto, students are asked to wait in a cluttered room while an experimenter gets something ready. Actually, though the student doesn't know it, this is the experiment. How much of the room will she remember? After 2 minutes, the experimenter moves her to another room and asks her.
Tell me every object in that room that you can remember.
Women typically give answers like this.
On the right-hand side of the desk right here was a briefcase with your initials at the top. Then there was a toque with mitts and an I am 40 button on it. In the middle there was envelopes, York University envelopes. There was a thing of Clearasil.
She went on and on in detail. So did most of the women. Men were more likely to say, I don't know, some stuff. We are different. It's not evil sexism to say that. But feminist icon Gloria Steinem once told me that to say that men and women are different is not okay. And doing research like we just showed is un-American. Give me a break. I'm glad that so far in America we have not let the authoritarians set all the rules. That's our show. See you next week.